All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the Speed Traveler Cars and Coffee Roadshow. It's Saturday morning, and Charlie, we got a great show for you, available on all podcast platforms, including hometownstation.com. And of course, you can always visit us at thespeedtraveler.com and also on YouTube and Instagram. But we got a great show lined up today, Charlie.
Yeah, actually we do. It's funny. I have a little addition to what you were saying. I didn't realize, but we can actually, you can actually watch the video of us blabbing. Not that anyone's going to want to do that. But I saw the video on KHTS's YouTube page on Saturday morning, and that was cool. It was YouTube Live. It was on there. And then also, as you said, it'll be on the Speed Traveler's own YouTube page.
Outstanding. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we've got a great show. If you are listening live on KHTS in Newhall this morning, welcome to Cars and Coffee Saturday morning. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today. Our featured marque today is the VW Volkswagen, all versions. We're going to talk a little bit about the Scirocco, the Rabbit. We're going to talk a little bit about the cars that we own that are Volkswagens.
Yeah, it's cool. We got a nice collection, and we've had them in the past growing up. I mean, I don't know a kid, our age that did not start with a Volkswagen. It was one of the first cars they ever owned, and it's an easy car to work on. I mean, my dad, his first car was a Volkswagen back in 1956, I think it was. And I remember him telling me he'd travel from ski town to ski town, go from Mammoth to Aspen, and he would sit on a milk crate as his driver's seat.
Safety last. That's what we like to say around here.
Maybe third. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Volkswagens. We're also going to talk about ways you can take your own car if you got a classic car, which a lot of you are doing Cars and Coffee this Saturday morning. So we're going to tell you how you could take your car and use it in TV shows and movies, which we've done a lot of with our other company, Hollywood Show Cars.
Yeah, it's a really great way to monetize a fun toy in a car, and it doesn't matter what it is. And you know what? Being Volkswagen as our marquee car for the weekend or today's show, very popular in the movie industry.
Oh, absolutely. As you just said, the 70s bugs are so iconic. They want to use them in every 70s production there is right now. And we'll talk a little bit about it later, but the VW Rabbits are super hot, very iconic to the 80s. A little bit later, we're going to talk about how you can find your own Volkswagen. I mean, we've bought and sold a lot of cars in our past, and it's part of the fun of the Speed Traveler. A lot of people ask, well, what exactly is the Speed Traveler? And I'd say it's just a big bucket of car stuff, right? Like we talk about buying cars, we talk about classic cars, we talk about using your car in movies, we talk about race cars.
We talk about driving cars, I mean, one of our programs is Best Roads that's kind of where the Speed Traveler started, and it was all about driving roads. And honestly, I think our first episode of that was Mulholland, yeah. And we had a VW Bug and a Ferrari for that episode.
Oh, that's a good point. If you want to see it, that was our very first Speed Traveler production. It's called Best Roads Mulholland Highway. If you live out here in Southern California, Mulholland Highway is a spectacular road. We started at Universal Studios. Actually, we started at Michelli's Italian restaurant across the street because Universal Studios kicked us out.
Yeah, we tried filming there, but security was on us pretty swiftly. So
they were. So we went over to Michelli's.
And Frank was awesome at Michelli's.
I agree. It's a family-owned restaurant, the original Italian restaurant, I think, that's still open in Hollywood. I think it's 75-ish years old. So check out Michelli's if you're either in Hollywood or you're over by Universal Studios. But to get back to Mulholland and Best Roads, it's a great road. I think it was 55 miles, and we went from Universal Studios to Malibu.
We did. We had to. The snake part of the road was basically washed away, so we had to bypass that initially. But we went back and did it. Yeah. And I remember growing up as a kid, always going up there and causing mayhem. We went up there many times. I did it on bicycles. We did some motorcycle races up there back in the day. As a matter of fact, there's some great stories about that with some other very famous people as well.
Yeah. So we're going to talk road trips, and we're going to talk classic VWs a little bit later. We're going to talk about how you can get your car in the movies. So stick with us for the next hour. But now that we've covered that, Chris, we are going to move on to our automotive F1 news portion. Today it's going to be F1 news and another victory for Red Bull and Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, record-breaking season for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. That was at 9 races in a row for him personally. That
13.
exceeds the single driver record held held by Michael Schumacher.
He tied it. It's it was a Red Bull record from the 2009 to 13 era. So it was Sebastian Vettel.
That's right. And he surpassed Michael Schumacher and Juan Manuel Fangio.
Yep.
And I believe
Bordeaux Ascari.
Yes.
He did it over 2 seasons. It was pretty interesting. It wasn't 9 in a row. Max has done 9 in a row. I guess Vettel has done 9 in a row, but Alberto Ascari did it over 2 seasons. Also, what was interesting is the Indy 500 was one of those races. He actually didn't make the Indy 500. So, there's a little asterisk next to 9 in a row for Ascari.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, Red Bull, they're absolutely dominant this year. I don't see that stopping anytime soon. We go into Monza this weekend, a very fast course. The DRS advantage that Red Bull possibly has will be a much bigger effect here because the straightaways are so much longer. But Aston Martin is coming back. They started off strong. Fernando Alonso was really incredible driving the wheels off that car. Some rule changes that seem to be very specific to the Aston Martin kind of played in against them in some of the most recent races. But man, second place for Fernando Alonso, and that late red flag. Alonso almost went for the lead. I mean, sure looked like he was going to dive bomb in there a couple times to try to take that lead with that, green-white checkered kind of situation they had in the final few laps of Zandvoort.
Yeah, and it was a great race. We're talking about the Dutch Grand Prix, Zandvoort. But I think you're right that he could have dive bombed Max. I think that Lawrence Stroll, aka Darth Vader, who is the owner of the Aston Martin team, probably would have killed him if he had taken the car out. So they really needed those points. For those of you who don't know, F1 rewards the teams by how many points they score at the end of the year, and that rewards means money.
Right.
And
to clarify that, there's a drivers' championship, which is what most of the fans are watching, and that's what we're talking about with Max Verstappen, the drivers' championship. But what really pays the teams from the FIA and the Formula One World Championship is the constructors' championship, to what you're referring to, Charlie. And that second place for Alonso was very, very important because he's in a real tight battle for second place in the drivers' championship with Perez and Lewis Hamilton. Perez is holding that position, but Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso were pretty much bottlenecked on points. And this was a big day, big weekend at Zandvoort for the Aston Martin. They had some aero tweaks that they were able to work on the rear end of the car that seems to be benefiting them dramatically. And I think that's going to carry over into Monza.
I think so. With the high-speed track, who should be really fast is McLaren at Monza, right? Because they were excellent at the British Grand Prix this year at Silverstone. So I would look to see McLaren back up there for our buddy, who is Zach Brown, who's the team principal of McLaren. He's done an incredible job turning that team around.
Yeah, additionally, he's done great not only in the Formula One world, but also in the IndyCar world. We'll talk about IndyCar a little bit later on in the show, but sticking with Formula One, I agree with you 100% that the McLarens really should be much quicker, much more competitive. And I think that battle for second place, third place, assuming that Max Verstappen does stay out in front, which is, it's not a foregone conclusion, but Red Bull is just so strong. Max is so determined. I don't see that changing, barring incident. But the thing is, Monza is a place that can breed some pretty wild incidences. There's some high-speed opportunities that go into very slow, high-speed straightaways that go into some very tight corners that breed opportunities. And, drivers that are willing to take that risk, like an Oscar Piastri, and Ferrari, is got to do something. They've done nothing but flounder. I mean, all the memes on Instagram and all the social medias, it's a sinking ship. Everything's going backwards. It's horrendous what's going on there. It
is, and now they're going to their home Grand Prix. And so they've got to deliver. Just to tease it a little bit, we've got in a few weeks, we got a Ferrari episode coming up, and we're going to have a great guest on. So let's hope that Ferrari can turn it around at Monza.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whatever the failure was that Charles Leclerc suffered at Zandvoort, that was just pitiful. And they say it was a floorboard, but I don't know. I think Charles Leclerc kind of fell asleep a little bit. I think he got bored. He wasn't winning. I think he got a little pouty. I mean, honestly, I think he got a little bit pouty. And Carlos Sainz is, I don't know. Again, I think the car and the strategies are not great, but these are two really good drivers, really
Agreed.
strong drivers. They should be contending. I don't think they're driving to their level. Right. Now, Ferrari's not helping them, not with a good car, not with strategy. And I think the drivers are really starting to show that emotion. So they've really got to show some kind of turnaround at Monza this weekend.
Well, we are going to go back to F1 a little bit later in the show, tease it a little bit. We're going to go back to F1. You've had some amazing trips to Monza, correct?
God, it's a bucket list track. And I'll say this, wear comfortable shoes and bring your own toilet paper.
So we are going to get back to a couple of Chris's stories from Monza later in the show. But next we're going to talk a little bit about the VWs and which cars we like. We're going to take a little break. For those of you listening on Saturday morning, you're listening on KHTS AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. You can also find us at hometownstation.com and on your favorite podcast network. Also, we never say this, but if you're looking to communicate with us and ask us questions, hit us up on Instagram at The Speed Traveler. Also, we're on YouTube. You can send us a note there. We put everything we record on YouTube. So hit us up there. If you've got questions about a particular car, about racing, please let us know.
Yeah, and I want to add to that before we go to commercial break. If you have a car that you acquired in a very interesting way, or you got a story to tell about your car, we would love to showcase your story. So send us that story, send us those photos, send us that message, Instagram, YouTube, the website, whatever. You can always find us at hometownstation.com. All right, well, welcome back to the Speed Traveler Roadshow, Cars and Coffee, and this is our next segment. We're going to be highlighting the Volkswagen, and you can find all of our podcasts on hometownstation.com and your favorite podcast networks and platforms. Of course, you're listening to us live here on KHTS AM 1220 and FM 98.1. And always send us a message on Instagram at The Speed Traveler and on YouTube at The Speed Traveler and on the interwebs at www.thespeedtraveler.com. And Charlie, you know what? An iconic car, one of the oldest, one of the highest production cars in the world. Aside from a Ford, maybe Ford F-150, but right. The Volkswagen Bug
had the record for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, and model years, I think it was over 40 model years. Unbelievable. Yes. It's pretty funny because VW Bugs, Beetles, they were everywhere, and now you're hard pressed to find one.
It's in good running nick. It is a challenge now. It's an old car. I mean, the last Bugs were I should say, of the traditional Bugs, because there was a rebirth in 90, a reboot in 90 something. There was even a VW Bug Cup racing in Europe.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
Which was amazing. It was like the Mazda Miata Cup, MX-5 Cup today, where there's 80 cars in a race.
Yeah, I think it's called the Fun Cup. And
Yes.
There's a video if you check it out on YouTube. There's a video from where was the Battle of the Bulge fought? Spa, Francorchamps, yes. The track. And I think there's 200 of them in the race. And they just keep going and going and going and going.
You can't tell the front of the race from the back of the race. And I guarantee you, every single one of those drivers was laughing their keister off.
Yeah. But we were definitely going to talk a little bit more about Volkswagen. It's a relatively affordable collector car. And we talk a lot about collector cars. And, it is something that is pretty easy to work on. I mean, I really like Volkswagens as collector cars because they're easy to work on, parts are still available, and they're relatively cheap.
So, I mean, there's aftermarket brands that specialize in Bug parts exclusively.
Yeah,
you know, I
exactly.
mean, we've ordered
J-Bugs.
J-Bugs is one of them. They're
In
down in
Oceanside.
Oceanside, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, we've ordered a lot of stuff for one of the bugs that we've had in the past, and one of the bugs we still have. As a matter of fact, I think we have two Volkswagens in the collection still, right?
We do. We have two. We have a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle that we purchased, and we're going to talk a little bit later in this segment about great places to buy them. But we have that one that we bought to use in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
I think we paid $3,000 for the car and made $9,000 working 20 days on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And the best part is it's a 71 Beetle and not a 69 Beetle. The movie was set in August of 1969.
Which is pretty funny.
And then also we've got a Combi van, which it started as a 15-window van, and we did some modifications, and now it's a 23-window van.
But that's a story. That's going to be a fun story to tell.
Agree.
You know.
And that one came from Brazil.
That was
and it's been quite the journey getting the car is physically in our possession. It's taken about 6 months to make that happen.
God, it seems like longer than that.
And now
Ralph was pivotal in making that happen, though. You know, Ralph was really kind of the hammer to the nails on that one.
Ralph, who owns Hollywood Show Cars with us, really wanted this Combi van from Brazil, and you know, the jury's still out on if it was a good purchase or a bad purchase.
Right. Well, when we sell it, we'll know.
Exactly. We haven't registered yet. It's been very difficult finding a way to register. A lot of people register their cars in Montana.
And that's changing.
It is. And you could still do it. You have to start an LLC in Montana. If the car's domestic, it's a piece of cake.
Right.
What we found out is if the car is not from the U.S., it's much more difficult to register in a place like Montana.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on that alone. If you're interested, drop us a line. If you are interested in seeing an episode on how to register a car from out of country.
Yeah,
because it's a process, you know, and we kind of learned it the hard way. We ended up getting a little bit of help from some different folks that had some specialty knowledge in that category, which was very beneficial, and we'd be happy to pass that on to you in a future episode.
Yeah, and if you have a question about Volkswagens or any collector car and importing, registering, shoot us a message on Instagram at The Speed Traveler, or find us on our YouTube page, which is The Speed Traveler. Or listen in here at the Speed Traveler Roadshow.
Right. You know, and back to the Rabbit or Volkswagen, you know, one of the first cars that I ever owned, it was a second car, I should say, was a Volkswagen Rabbit. And it was so much fun. It was an easy car. It was a 1980, I think it was an 83. I got to remember. It was baby blue.
I remember. Baby blue was four doors.
Yeah, 4 doors, you know, and it was the party mobile, man. That thing saw a lot of action around the UCLA campus.
I mean, it was the time in the 80s.
Right, you know, and cousin Stanley had a convertible.
He did.
So we were always, I mean, it was just such a staple of any young adult to have that Volkswagen Rabbit.
Right.
You know, whether it was a convertible, a cabriolet, or the GTI, which really in Europe was known as the Golf. It was always known as the Golf in Europe. In the US, it was marked as the GTI. In later marks, in current marks, you'll see it as the Golf GTI.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The Rabbit is, I'm a purist. I love the Beetle. I think the Beetle's awesome, and you can still find them you can find a good one for $7,000 or $8,000. I mean, I think the $3,000 days are gone unless you're handy. But that's not a bad price for a really classic car that you'll be able to use in movie shoots if you happen to be inclined.
And what's interesting is even with the if you do find one that's just basically a rust bucket and you have a good body panels but you have a rusted out chassis, there are companies that are now making the full bottom chassis, the full bottom pan.
Right.
And you just basically drop the body parts on top of that, and you've got a very current suspension, disc brakes.
Right. Instead of the Fred Flintstone brakes.
Fred Flintstone brakes. I mean, I remember one time literally jumping out of actually, you saved the day. I jumped out of the car because the brakes weren't working, and you were stuck in the passenger seat and just grabbed the e-brake.
That's right.
I already saved myself. I just jumped right out.
I do remember those days. We're going to have our friend David Arnold on in a few weeks. And we definitely were a little out of control back in the day. We're not condoning this behavior, but I do recall setting up a racetrack around the streets of Bel Air,
Oh
and
my!
it was VW Rabbit convertible versus your VW Rabbit four door.
That's right.
But we'll save that story for another day.
The Bel Air Grand Prix.
But getting back to some of the other versions, if you're looking at a classic Beetle, that's great. I think you can't go wrong there. The parts are so cheap. But the 80s Rabbits are really starting to go up in value.
Right, and not only is it the Rabbit, it's the Scirocco. I mean,
absolutely,
what? Everyone knows about the Rabbit. Not everyone knows about the Scirocco.
Right.
It's usually the purists in this that really like the Scirocco. It was only made, I believe, from 1974 to 1981 as the MK1.
That was the MK1, and then they came out with the MK2. If you could find the MK1, 74 to 81, those are your date ranges if you're looking on Craigslist or Hemmings or something like that. But those are the really rare ones.
Yeah.
The Holy Grail was the Scirocco S.
S.
And I doubt you find one of those. You might be able to find one. But yeah, I agree with you. That is a very collectible car, the MK1.
But the sales values of those cars are showing that. I mean,
Absolutely.
They're actually very, very expensive. You probably, I mean, if you can afford to get a Scirocco that's in good nick, because you're going to spend some time if you're getting one that's not in great nick and you want to be in good shape.
Absolutely.
And finding parts for the Scirocco, believe it or not, a lot of the Rabbit and the Scirocco have a lot of the same parts, interchangeable parts.
It's not bad.
But the body and the trim stuff is not the same. I mean, the doors aren't the same, the panels aren't the same there.
Right.
And that's the stuff that's really hard to find. The
same.
glass is not the same.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really, really challenging. It's the same motor. It's a 1.8 liter or 1.6 liter.
Yeah,
it was
one started with a 1.6.
Yeah. And, so that stuff's the same. Mechanically, it's the same, but the body is that where you really end up having to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I wouldn't say jump right into Scirocco.
I agree.
Start with a Bug or a Rabbit.
I agree. I think a more seasoned VW collector is probably okay to go find a Scirocco. There is a marque MK2 that was 82 to 91. That's the second generation Scirocco. Those are easier to find. Maybe not a bad idea for a future collector because they're still relatively affordable. The MK1s are, I've seen them for 25 grand now.
Oh yeah, and that's not even in good nick.
It's in pretty good shape.
Good shape.
I've seen decent ones for 15. I've seen better ones for 25. The MK2 you can find for 15 for sure.
Much different body style, same shape, but it's got the rounded corners.
Agreed.
It wasn't very angular,
right?
Like the Rabbit, what the original Rabbits were. They were very angular corners and edges, very sharp. They kind of softened the edges a little bit on the MK2. And it's so for me personally, it's MK1.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to get a Scirocco, definitely go after the MK1.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's anything wrong with the MK2. I mean, the platform is basically the same. It's basically the same driving car. But bear in mind, again, it's a shorter production run. Right. So those body parts are going to be even more difficult to come by than the MK. The MK1 is going to be a lot easier to find or create body parts for that, especially if you have a machine shop because of the square edges, the angular edges. If you got a guy that's good with metal or a girl that's good with metal, they're going to be able to replicate parts for those panels much more easily.
All right. So we only have a couple more minutes in this segment. We're talking classic cars that you go out and find on your own. And the Rabbit, one of the variations of the Rabbit, the car that I personally love, I think you love it as well, is the two-seat pickup truck, mini truck version of the Rabbit called the VW Caddy.
Yeah, that is probably it's right up there with being one of my all-time favorite cars, period.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
And there's a few different variations. There's a diesel one, there's a petrol version. The diesel one gets amazing mileage, like 50 miles to the gallon.
Unbelievable. It's a tiny little diesel engine and it will run forever. That's an engine that you can put 750,000 miles on it and then maybe think about doing some work on it. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
If you're looking for them, they made those from 78 to 84. We've found quite a few on Craigslist. And once again, we're giving you a couple quick hints on how to search on Craigslist. First off, it's always better to buy from a private party. If you're going to buy, you're going to pay more. And a lot of people don't care. And the car will probably still go up if you pay full retail at a dealer. But, if you really want to try and save some money, the idea is to go find one from a private party. So go into Craigslist, go into Los Angeles, for instance, pull up cars for sale. And then on the left side, there's a pull down menu and it'll allow you to use the map. So pull that down, go look at the map, pull up the map, and you can expand that to cover basically the whole West Coast and the whole East Coast.
Yeah, and a key thing to consider with that as well is Craigslist is an incredible tool. There are other tools that are similar to Craigslist, but it doesn't matter what tool you're using, especially with the 80s versions of any car, the metal starts to get a little bit thinner. They're trying to make the cars lighter. I mean, it's at the end of the grass crisis that kind of culminated, I think, in 1978 or 79. Yep. So everything was made lighter and more efficient. That means stuff rots out a little bit more. So a nice little tip is to look at cars that were the original purchase location was in a drier state,
for sure,
a more arid environment. Humidity and rain wreak havoc on cars, especially at the later in the years we get. With big heavy steel, like again the a 1971 Volkswagen Bug is going to have much much thicker and denser steel than a 1983 VW Rabbit.
Yeah.
So that's something very that you really should take into consideration. Also, there are places. Arizona gets a bad rap for being it's a great place for cars to be stored, but it gets a bad rap for any car with air conditioning.
Right.
So if you do buy a car out of Arizona, that's great. Yank the air conditioning unit. Because of valley fever, I guess, is kind of prevalent. Kind of all that the molecules stay in the air conditioning unit. So yank that air conditioning unit out if you get a car from Arizona. A lot of great cars come out of Arizona because, again, of the dry, arid terrain and desert-like climate.
Yeah, I think before we sign off on this segment, honorable mention would be the 83, 84 GTI Rabbit. I mean, that's kind of the one to have right now. It's not so easy. You see them on expensive auction sites like Bring a Trailer now, and great car.
Oh yeah,
but you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay for owning a GTI, but maybe worth it. We're gonna come back and talk a little bit more after this break about how you can use your car in movies and productions. And now that there's production, almost every state in the country now. I mean, it used to be kind of dedicated to Southern California, but now there's production all over.
Right.
So we're going to take a quick break. This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow. We're going to come back to you in a few minutes. You can hear us on KHTS AM 1220 in Newhall, California, and on your favorite podcast network. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Speed Traveler Roadshow. Cars and coffee available on KHTS AM 1220 and FM 98.1. Also, you can check us out on the hometownstation.com website. You can also find us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, the webs, at The Speed Traveler. And of course, we're available on all your favorite podcast platforms. And Charlie, some new stuff going on in the world. And, we were talking about the movie industry and how to get your cars out there. And, right now there's a big strike going on, which isn't helping anything, but I'm also looking at some of these agencies, and there's tons of non-union work out there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, for sure, the big disagreement right now between the writers and the studios is hurting everybody. So, registering your car to shoot in movies may not be appropriate today because of the strike, but it's a good time to go out there when the strike is resolved. They're going to go crazy with production. I mean, there's going to be production everywhere when the strike was resolved because we haven't had a lot of content in the last year.
Every show that's on hiatus, all the big ones are going to come back. Some will lose their funding. Some actors will move on to different projects. But I also think, to that fact that there's a lot of commercial stuff. That doesn't mean that industry stops.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the insurance companies aren't doing their car insurance ads and things like that. So there are still lots of opportunities for those that want to take advantage of it to get their cars into TV commercials and productions.
For sure. And the Speed Traveler, we're all about having fun in your car, driving your car, You can check out some of our road trip videos on the Speed Traveler YouTube channel. Just type in the Speed Traveler. You're going to see all sorts of videos about us taking some crazy trips on Mulholland Highway, up Highway 1. That was a really good one.
That was a great one.
We've got one coming up where we drove around the Valley of Fire in Las Vegas.
But also you'll see some of the commercials that our cars have been in,
Right.
and movies, commercials and movies. We can't show the whole commercial because that's there's some agreements that we have to adhere to there. But I mean, like you mentioned previously, the VW Bug, 1971 was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Right.
We had the Lotus in the Motorola commercial and a bunch of other stuff that went on.
Right.
I mean, the Mercedes that went into Winning Time, which should have just been called Showtime, but whatever.
That's all right. Showtime on HBO.
Yeah.
But there's a few ways you can get into it. There's a website that we don't have any affiliation with. We probably should. And it's called driveventi.com. And you can register your car at DriveVenti. It's a really fun way if you've got an interesting car, a period correct car. So always productions for 1960s cars, 1970s cars, 1980s cars. We actually just talked about the Volkswagen Rabbit. That car is highly sought after by production designers because it's so iconic to the 80s that they really want to rent that car.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't have a whole lot of money, you might want to consider buying an old Rabbit and using it for TV and production.
Yeah, I think every John Cusack movie ever made is going to be remade.
Yeah, exactly. And also the 70s, you mentioned the Bug that we have. We picked up a Bug for $3,000 on eBay from a private party. We always say you always want to try and buy a car from a private party, not from a retailer. And we paid $3,000 for the car. We ended up making $9,000 and working 20 days on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, forget about the car and the movie. Well, I talk about the movie, just the production life on that set was incredible. I mean, every day was, I got to say, I mean, whether you like Quentin Tarantino movies or not, whether you know him as an individual, whether you don't know him, whatever your opinion of him and his movies are, man, that was like one of the greatest experiences ever.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's the first one to work. He's the last one to leave at night. And what was interesting is like you watch the violent movies, you think he's kind of like a twisted individual. He smiles and laughs all night long.
I don't know how he does that. I thought we had a lot of energy, and it's like that's just over the top. I mean, he just keeps going. He's the Energizer Bunny rabbit right there.
So that was a really fun experience. We got to meet Margot Robbie. She was fantastic. We got to meet Brad Pitt. He's a car guy. And,
you actually stunt double in a sense, or driver doubled for him. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. So
I guess from the back of the head, you guys look the same.
From the butt back, and that's about it, right? Back of the head and the back of the butt, and that's about it. But if you do have a classic car, you might want to consider signing up on driveventi.com. That's a place where you'll get hit up. You just got to get some good pictures of the cars. We have a friend called Andrea Myers, who's also known as a car wrangler for the movies, and not just in Los Angeles and California, but in Georgia, in New Jersey, and Nevada, and all the places where they're starting to make more movies now. So if you're interested in finding a place to register your car for the movies, hit us up on the Speed Traveler Instagram page or on our webpage, thespeedtraveler.com, or on YouTube.
Yeah, you brought up a good point again. I mean, we mentioned it a moment ago, the production industry has moved, expanded dramatically outside of just Southern California. It's going across the country. And if you are in Georgia, if you are in Tennessee, wherever you are and you have an interesting car, there's definitely something being shot there. Whether it's a commercial or whether it's a movie, whether it's a low budget, high budget, it's going on. So if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely drop us a line, and we'll help you get pointed in the right direction.
For sure. We love sharing this tip with lots of people because it's fun. Like it's a great way to enjoy your car. You get paid pretty well. You get paid maybe $400 a day. But what's great about it is you're considered, a background person, but you don't get treated the same as the background people. I mean, no offense to those poor people that come out here and make $108 to work 8 hours.
Ugh.
But they're kind of sequestered to a corner. When you're driving the car in the background, you're going to interact with the director, you're going to interact with a lot of the stars, and you're going to be treated completely differently.
Completely different. Even if you are a background actor, if you have a car and you register that car, it gives you another step forward. It gives you a leg up in the industry.
For sure.
And you know what? You double bill for your time. You're a background person and or more. Exactly.
And get $250 bump for your car.
And you get a car bump. So, it's a great way to increase your earnings.
Absolutely.
As a struggling or aspiring actor or actress.
That's such a good point. You're instead of making $108 a day, you're going to make at least $350 a day. And you're also going to interact with Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're an aspiring actor, that's the thing to do.
So are you saying there will be a 10th movie?
There's definitely, apparently, a 10th movie being written as we speak.
As we speak.
Yeah. But we are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back for our final segment, and we're going to talk to Chris a little bit about his experience at the Formula One race in Monza. We're also going to talk about our big IndyCar weekend coming up in Portland this weekend.
That's going to be exciting.
This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow on KHTS Radio AM 1220 in Newhall, California. Also available on all your favorite podcasts.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Speed Traveler Cars and Coffee Saturday morning show, available on KHTS AM 1220 FM 98.1, and of course your favorite podcast platforms. Charlie, we got Monza F1 coming up. That's going to be really exciting. We also have the IndyCar weekend coming up next weekend. Oh, no, it's this weekend.
It's this weekend.
Wow.
Tomorrow.
Oh boy. I guess I better get ready. Let's go do back to F1 a little bit. Monza, this weekend. And, Charlie, that's one that I've had an opportunity to go to on a number of occasions. And, I'll say this, for Monza, there's a couple things that make this an absolute bucket list event Formula One race to go to. One, if you look at the prices for Formula One races, like we got Las Vegas coming up, and prices for the tickets there are started about 10 grand.
Oh yeah, it's outrageous.
You can get a GA ticket for Monza, and for a couple $100, €150, €200, and it's a great race to go to. First of all, the history, the heritage. It's Ferrari.
And what years, just so for a little background, what years did you go?
So I went, a couple years before COVID. So I went in the mid, 2015 and 17, I believe. And I also went in I believe it was the early 80s.
Oh, wow.
So way back when with my mom, my mom, the gearhead, of course, we followed the Formula One tour a couple of years, hitting all the European Grand Prix. And I mean, those memories are etched in my mind. I remember my mom crawling through, she was encouraging me, oh, let's go through this hole in the fence. It's like, okay. I mean,
F1 car goes whizzing by at
200 miles an hour. It's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't go through that fence.
What places, where did you stay? Is there a town in Monza?
So the township of Monza is incredible. It's a mini Milan. So if you ever need to go clothing shopping and you're in Italy, don't go to Milan. Go to Monza. It's the exact same stuff.
Especially if you're a gearhead.
Especially if you're a gearhead, right? You gotta get your fancy. You're in Italy. You got to get your fancy shoes and your tight T-shirt. But Monza is the proper there. It's fantastic. The whole town goes off. There's all kinds of sports stuff going on. The Mille Miglia cars are always out there. The guys with these classic cars, and they do a little car tour. Monza the track itself is a ginormous park. Again, I said it before, wear comfortable shoes and be prepared to walk. There's so much to see there. There's these churches and these facilities, and then the actual castles that are on there. There's all kinds of great events to go walking on. I kind of snuck through a hole in the fence and climbed onto the classic banking of the Parabolica. the parabolic, the banking of the old Monza Oval. And this is in a section where no one's supposed to be. And I started to step, I went to the hole, I hiked up this hill, I started walking towards the banking, and I just about to step onto the banking, and I watched these 4 carabinieri. They're like the military police. Right. They got their assault rifles, and they start walking towards me. And when I stopped walking, they stopped walking. And if I started walking forward again, they started walking forward again. So I stopped, and they just looked at me and gave me the finger, don't do that. Cool. So, I almost got kicked out or arrested by the carabinieri. I have a couple photos to prove it.
That's so great. We previewed the race a little earlier in the show, but once again, Max Verstappen's going for win number 10, which would set the all-time record in a row.
Yeah, as a driver. And I don't really see how he's going to be stopped. I mean, he's got the fastest car. He's on point, and he's got that amazing, when they open the DRS in the back, his car's faster than anybody. So I don't see on a high-speed circuit how anyone's going to catch him this weekend. Well, the thing is Max will probably be out in front, so he won't get to use his DRS.
Right.
And I would venture a guess, again, you mentioned them previously, the McLarens. Piastri and Norris are going to be aggressive. They're going to be fast.
Yeah, they were fast at Britain at Silverstone, and they're going to be fast again here.
So don't be surprised if you see one of those papayas, orange papayas sticking their nose inside Max Verstappen. Yeah. I would not be surprised if we see a McLaren on the front row.
That would be cool. All right, you heard it here first. So that's F1. Also up in Portland this weekend is the IndyCar race. And it's near and dear to our heart because our U.S. Touring Car Championship Series is running as support to IndyCar this weekend. And so we're going to be racing there. Yeah,
and it's a doubleheader. We get to do 2 races. We'll have both our cars up there, and we're doing 2 races. It's I think we have a little bit of an we haven't really talked about this, but I know we're both kind of like throwing elbows at each other on who's going to work their way to the front.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, both of our cars, Chris has got a BMW M3. I've got a Honda S2000. Both cars are really going to be quick, I think, at this track. So you'll have to check out our Instagram page or YouTube to see exactly what happens. I don't know. Maybe there's no show next week.
I know. Right. Maybe only one of us is here. I don't know. Hopefully none of our cars end up upside down.
But it should be a great weekend. We can't wait to report back next week. Next Saturday, we'll be back with a new show. We're going to tell you exactly what happened in Portland, have some good laughs. But Chris, thanks for coming in today. And we had another great day of Cars and Coffee on the Speed Traveler Roadshow. You can always find us on YouTube under the Speed Traveler. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us where you find your favorite podcasts. And we hope that you guys enjoyed talking cars, and we'll see you next weekend.